been made.
Is that saying then that they would not even allow you to make a presentation as to what you're doing here? What if they were to hear these statistics? I don't know how they would deny them, but they might.
Well, they've already been sent
They
information.
know this. Oh, you've
I mean,
sent this
we've
already.
already provided them with information.
Okay.
We are providing them with updated research information because apparently they're likely, by their own statements, public statements, to rely on experts at DEP. Now, I'm sorry, DEP is an agency that issues permits. They're not experts in many of these areas compared to lots of credible, national, international research.
It's a wrong
I
name.
think Mr. Kane referred to them as degreed professionals. Is that what it was?
That was
experts, degreed experts or
professionals.
something like that.
That was a term that was used.
Which has really often has little bearing on what's really going on because you have to ask, who they work for and what are their motivations. It's only public interest people that collect actual data of what's going on that get anywhere close. It's people like us in communities that finally get the truth told. Because when they want to put these projects forward, all kinds of things. I mean, for somebody to actually claim that there's not going to be much air pollution from this, what does that mean? Much air pollution, and what difference if it's only a little? If it would even be only a little, which would be ridiculous. It's too much because we already have too much. The Limerick supervisors, somebody has to say, why wouldn't they be looking for if they want to do energy projects? Good. Why aren't they looking at a great big solar panel project?
That would actually be clean.
Something that would actually be clean and benefit.
Right.
Their residents rather than this.
I'm just thinking as you're talking that I can imagine people watching this show tonight, especially people who live in that specific area around the source of this, calling the supervisors and saying, "I saw this on the ACE report.
Right.
What's going on here?"
Right.
And I can imagine them just saying, "You know what? Don't worry about that. Those people are wacko environmentalists. What we're doing is the right thing for you. We've got the DEP on our side, and we're going to use their experts." I can imagine what they're going to do with that thing.
That is exactly what's going to happen. So people can choose. Are they going to listen to public interest people who've gathered information for them, or are they going to listen to somebody who's trying to promote a really dangerous project in their community? That it's the air pollution and the health that's our major concern.
Right.
The people that live around this plant, even in East Coventry and all the surrounding communities, ought to be worried about the odor. There's going to be terrible noxious odor fumes from this thing. Unbelievable. Can you imagine all that trash lined up? Let's say 3,000 tons of trash coming into Limerick every day. Limerick's going to be used as a sacrifice zone. Again, we have to be the sacrifice zone. Limerick's been sacrificed to a nuclear power plant. Those people are already overexposed just from the Limerick nuclear power plant. Now they're doing their share for energy already. So they shouldn't have to put up with, nobody in this region should have to put up with another polluting energy plant.
Yeah. That just struck a responsive chord with me, Nick. In our previous program where we had Mike Ewall as a guest from the Energy Justice Network, we talked about the concept garbage in, garbage out. I mean, we are talking literally.
Literally.
We're talking a trash-to-ethanol plant. And let's just talk about the front end of this. I mean, this is a horrific concept at every level, unless you happen to be a person who's going to benefit personally, directly, financially, fiscally, because you're involved in the ethanol industry. But let's just talk about the front end of this process, garbage in. We're talking about a continuous parade of hundreds of trash trucks and or train cars every day, because the proposed capacity would be about 3,000 tons of dangerous wastes daily. Now, I did some math between the last program and this one because I thought it would be instructive to take a look at this. We're talking about, if this facility operates 7 days a week, we're talking about 21,000 tons a week of trash. A ton of trash is a lot of trash, Nick. We're talking about over 1 million tons of trash per year. And we're talking about more than 21 million pounds of trash per year. If you think about what that constitutes, and we're talking about this being exposed, as Donna mentioned, the noxious odors will be nonstop, 24/7, every day, regardless of weather, regardless of time of year. Those odors are going to be horrific.
From the trash going
from the
in
trash-
as well as
Just
as
what's-
well as
well,
As
just-
well as
oh,
the
just going
ethanol
in.
plant. As well as the ethanol
Both.
plant,
It'll
the
be both.
noxious odors are coming
It'll be both.
just from corn ethanol plants. They're horrible at corn ethanol plants.
I just want to follow up
Yeah.
one point around that whole construct, Nick, and that is anybody who lives in this area knows what Route 422 looks like. Now, some of this, we don't know what percentage would theoretically come in on the railways, but 422 would bear, some of that traffic load.
We expect it would have.
We would have to, as much
It's already
as
With
horrendous.
the
in
hundreds,
traffic.
with 3,000 tons of trash every day, that is just huge. So it's got to. I mean, could the rail hold it all? And if the rail's going to hold all that, how's the rail also going to take out the ethanol from? I mean, it's amazing.
Well, we haven't even talked about the reverse flow traffic, okay? So once the product has been produced.
Right.
Once it's been produced and it's been stored on site, as Mike Ewell told us in our previous program, then it has to be loaded and shipped.
Transported.
Somewhere. So it's either going to go out on the rail lines or it's going to go out in trucks, which means either, again, horrific transportation jam-ups and gridlock on 422, or a horrific burden on the rail lines. We didn't even talk about...
And it's going to have to sit somewhere before
Correct.
they use it.
Correct.
I mean, they can't put in 3,000 tons all at one time. So this is going to have to sit along there, and then you have to say to yourself, that's going to off-gas all on its own before
And we
they
don't really
even
know
start-
what's in that trash anyway, and
Well,
whether that it's
we-
hazardous, or do we know what's
we
going to go
have
in there?
a pretty good feel.
Nobody's ever going to know what's in the waste stream, Nick. It's everything people put in. It could be you could get mercury emissions from light bulbs and things like that. It could be lead. It could be radioactive products. People put everything in the trash. They're not going to ever separate all this trash to bring it in here. It's going to be whatever's in the waste stream.
So it's not garbage.
could
It's
be-
not food garbage.
It's
It
not-
can be food. It can be everything.
but it's
It
gonna
can
be everything, that's what I'm
everything.
saying.
Everything.
But the people who promote these kinds of projects and promote things like landfills would use the language selectively to try to suggest that there's really nothing dangerous here. This is just household municipal waste. It's like people in Limerick Township right now who are saying things like, well, there's really no concern about this air pollution. It's negligible, it's minor, it's benign. That's somewhere between
Not
that's
factual.
somewhere between uninformed and disingenuous, if not absolutely dishonest.
Well, when those statistics are as horrific as you've read there from the 80s through the 90s, and we're talking about Montgomery County, how can anybody deny that? And if there's no other way to prove, I mean, all those things that you're talking about are results of the kinds of things that the nuclear power plant can produce or come out of the landfill. And how can and if there are no other sources or many other sources, how can anybody deny that that's part of the problem?
Exactly. They have to say it's a major part of the problem when Montgomery County's air is number 2 for added cancer risk.
Right.
For inhalation of added cancer risk, number 2 county in the state.
You can't deny that and keep a straight face
And
when
if you-
you look at the facts.
And if you look at the pollution permit that we looked at, there's only one pollution permit we could find for a trash ethanol plant. Don't forget, there are no others anywhere in the world.
Zero.
So this is like
It's an experiment.
an experimental
yeah,
project.
Yeah, the guinea pig community. That's what sacrifice guinea pigs. That's what they are. So this is what will happen here. These kinds of air pollutants that are known to be coming out of this plant, Montgomery County is for health risks, air rankings for health risks throughout the whole nation. Montgomery County, for all these air pollutants that are going to be coming out of this plant, is in the top 10% of the nation in counties for added these air pollution health emissions. So we really
This
can't
is-
afford any more
and this is
of it all.
This is recent data. This is
This is the most
latest.
recent we can find.
The most recent we can find.
Let's talk about it from the perspective. Let's suppose the supervisors have to justify this somehow. They can't just. I mean, okay.
maybe
you said
yes,
a lot
maybe
of
no.
A lot of it's been. I don't mean they have to justify it for the public. They justified it in their heads for some reason. Either
money.
the use of that existed facility, it's going to bring more tax base into the Limerick Township or whatever. There's got to be something that they're using as a justification.
And they may believe that. They may, in fact, believe that
Right.
that's going to happen. But past practice would suggest that anytime a major polluting industry is sited, is located, and becomes operational, the people who benefit are the people who own that industry and who reap that profit. The people who suffer are all of the neighbors, anybody who's proximate to the site, and anybody who either breathes the air or drinks the water that is polluted as a result.
And look what happened with the nuclear plant. Remember, electric cheap to
Too
meter.
cheap to meter.
Remember
right.
that problem?
Yes, I
Clean,
remember.
clean,
Yeah,
green.
and you remember we were all told, oh, it doesn't emit radiation. It's all no problem. We found out all that's not true. The other thing that's significant is a lot of these projects, not a lot of different kinds of projects where communities are promised all these jobs and all these things, don't pan out. It actually absolutely doesn't come out to what it's supposed to be. We think that
Those promises,
yeah.
excuse me, Donna, those promises tend to be hollow promises that are never realized. If the people in Limerick, whether they're elected township officials or residents, have any doubt, ACE encourages them to do their own research. As we've said many times on this show, Nick, don't believe us if you don't choose to. We research all of this information. We verify and document all this information. We'll be happy to provide attribution and citations to anybody that's interested. But you don't have to believe us. But you might want to look at the facts, because the facts are going to affect your future and your health, and in some cases, the value of your property. We didn't even talk about this yet. I mean, most people want to live a good life. They like to be in the suburbs. You know, Montgomery County is generally regarded as a pretty good place to be. But if you happen to be next to a major polluter, guess what happens? The value of your property is historically, traditionally likely, if not almost assured, to go down.
Particularly when there's going to noxious odors, as there will be. The odors from this thing will be horrific, really.
So then that's an obvious pollution when people can smell it. Radiation, they
Right,
can't see
right,
or
they
feel
can't
it,
see it or
smell it or feel it.
Exactly.
But this they
So
will be able
they can
to
ignore it. If you
right.
can't smell it or you can't see it,
Exactly.
you tend to ignore it
So you
and
think
hope,
it's not there.
hope that it's not there.
And
But
we
in
are
this case,
we
it's
are
not
really
true.
concerned, Nick, because during the time when we were trying to get Limerick supervisors to fight for more precautions on the casks that were going to store that high-level radioactive waste, they just rolled over. And Exelon got whatever they wanted. They got no added precautions or anything else. They didn't even ask all the questions. And at that point, you would ask, had we ever been for a presentation? We tried to talk to them. We sent them packets. I went to the meetings. We sent them whistleblowers about the
Security problems.
the security,
And the
but
leaks.
also about the actual construction of these casks. And there was a whistleblower, a nuclear engineer, who was very concerned about the cement and so forth and so on these casks. But they didn't listen to any of it. They didn't even pay any attention. We sent them very substantiated packets
Specific
to give them ammunition to ask the right questions. To get, on the other hand, there you have Pottstown Borough Council, who actually fought for more restrictive measures and actually ended up winning increased monitoring, internal monitoring on these things. So that's the difference in local
I'm wondering if they
officials.
ever read those things, if they already have the agenda in their head.
Right.
No matter what people say then. And
Right.
a lot of people feel this way, the politicians in general, not some of the ones we've mentioned, but in general, they already have the agenda in place. And no
Right.
matter what we say, they're going to go ahead with it unless people in large numbers really object to this.
Well, I think that's what's going on here in the
That's right.
very first article that we finally got printed about this after making some calls. There's David Kane in the beginning of the article says these supervisors are going to do due diligence, and a couple paragraphs later he's saying we're going to convince the naysayers that there's no problem with this. How can he convince the naysayers when I was, as recently as this past Friday, told by the PR guy for this project that they don't have any answers? We asked, remember the 57
Right.
questions we asked, because that if they did due diligence, they would answer those questions and they would say, ooh, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Maybe this isn't the project we should be trying to do here. But instead, the supervisors, 2.5 months later, have still failed to answer all those questions and are calling up and trying to meet with us personally so we can get to know who he is and he can get to know who we are. What does that have to do with protecting the health and safety? It's not about us. It's not about